very good. Do you think that marriage would be off to a great start? That they just leave, go in the honeymoon, and they're on their ways to 50 years of marital bliss? Do you think so? No, I don't think so. I don't know that they'll make it out of the parking lot without strangling one another. And yet, there's people that have been in church that sit in these pews week after week, and that's the way we try to live our life with our spiritual groom, Jesus. Well, I don't know if I can cherish you all the time, Jesus, but I'll give you the spare time that I've got. I don't know if I can really love you all the time, because there's a lot of other things I really love. I don't know if I can love you number one, but I'll try to fit you in somewhere. I got a real problem with that, obeying you about everything. That'd be giving you too much control of my life. I don't think I can do that. That's adultery, spiritual adultery. And Paul says, you say that you shouldn't commit adultery. And yet, of course, there's some of these folks that were thinking in their mind, they weren't actually doing the physical thing, and that may have been what he was referring to. But there's also a spiritual element to adultery. I don't want to be guilty of that. I really want to love Jesus the way that I should. I don't want to be unfaithful to him. Question 4, worshiping idols. Verse number 22. Thou that abhorrest idols, dost thou commit sacrilege? Look, this is a very serious thing. And whereas in things like murder, things like stealing, things like adultery, when God gave the original 10 Commandments, he just mentioned them briefly, spent just a few short words on the pronouncements against those sins. But when it comes to idolatry, when it comes to sacrilege, when it comes to not giving God first place in your life, the Lord said, I want to make things perfectly clear about this. And so he takes up 6 verses to explain that. And if you start in verse number 2 of Exodus chapter 20, it says, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. So the Lord didn't spend a great deal of time talking about the sin of murder and not doing that. He didn't spend a great deal of time about instructing not to lie or commit adultery or to steal. But when it came to the potential that human beings have of removing God from his place of position and placing other things there, he spent a great deal of time telling us specifically how we would struggle with that and what it is that we need to do to avoid it and why we should avoid it. And so we've mentioned it before, but idols come in different shapes and sizes, and they're not all made of stone or wood. And I would suggest to you that someone who has trouble with spiritual adultery is having a problem with putting other things before God, suffering from the same sin here, as mentioned here in letter E, or worshiping idols, letter D. All right, letter E. Question 5, the law. Thou that makest thy boast of the law, through breaking the law dishonorest thou God. The Jews boasted of their possession of the law, even though they realized that no one could keep the law completely. So they began to say that the physical possession of the law was equal to abiding by that law. In other words, the Jews came to the place where they thought, now this is, you're going to have to just use your imagination, but if the Jews, had Bibles, this is what they believed. They believed that just having this, just possessing the Bible was good enough. That actually just having the copy of the scriptures. And I don't know, have you ever seen some of the pictures? They had like little boxes and they would put scrolls and stuff and they'd strap that to their head. That was where that came from. They thought that just the possession of the Bible, of the scroll, was enough. That makes you honorable. That makes you righteous. But just having it means that you're obeying it. Well, you're not. There's lots of people that have these Bibles. I see Bibles in truck stops all the time, sitting on dashboards of trucks. See the guys getting out, and beer cans falling out of the truck. It's like they're not living what they should be living. If this really has the importance that they say it is, they should be living differently. It's not making a difference in their life. And so possession, just actually possessing the physical book, doesn't mean that you're righteous. Let's look at point number 4, the powerlessness of the Hebrews. For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles through you, as it is written. See, the Jews weren't speaking evil of God. It was the Gentiles who were speaking evil of God because they saw God's representatives, the Jews. And after witnessing their hypocrisy, they didn't want to have anything to do with the God of the Jews. And that's the main problem that we have in the church today, is how do we reach the people that you have soured on God? What do you mean, Brother Danny? Well, you live your life. And by your life, you're a testimony. And people look at your life and they say, well, Steve says he's a Christian. But if this is what he's going to do in his life, I know that that's wrong. And I don't want to have anything to do with a God that would let Steve in his family. And so we ruin the testimony of God with people all the time because our testimony isn't what it's supposed to be. And so here, the people who are in the most unique position to have a wonderful testimony, the Jews now have this albatross hanging around their neck that people who look at them say, hey, I don't want to have anything to do with the God of those Jews because of the way that they live, because of the way they've interacted with their neighbors in the neighboring countries, the ways that they treat one another, always, trying to take advantage of stuff like that, and manipulate the law so that they appear to be right when, they're really wrong. And so this is what Paul is talking about here in Romans chapter 6, or Romans 2:24. So that's a sad commentary. There's going to be some who say, I was curious about God, but I couldn't get past your testimony, so I rejected him. I don't want to stand before the Lord and face that accusation someday. We all will. We'll all have blood on our hands because of the way we've lived our lives. And there was one person that we could have reached who saw us and said, I was really thinking about what that person said, but after seeing him like that, I can't get past that. And that will be the one thing that sends that individual to hell. And that sin, that person's soul, will be, their blood will be on your hands. That's a terrible, sad commentary. That's one of the reasons why we say it so much. Please guard your testimony.